Because I want to ask you, Doc, James Turner was cut this week. Media has been reporting that he had, while they were there, I will say, while they were there, he's played well. There's times where you guys were not there. Obviously,
Right.
there's more to the story. All right,
Sure.
you guys aren't at fault for that because you can't see it, obviously. But what'd you think of that move to now Badgley and Jake Bates competing and releasing James Turner?
Yeah, and real fast, guys, come on. You don't think I watch NBA basketball? I'm a big fan of every single team. I only root. The only thing you're ever going to see me wear is the old English D, rocking all the Detroit teams. And I watch as much as I tolerate, because I'm kind of the one of the person that in the second half of the Pistons game would throw the pen at the TV and being like, Monty Williams, what the F are they paying him to do? This is crazy. So now you look at it and you see the Lions. And boy, it just puts a smile on your face because they just do things that make people happy. To me, I said last week I would be surprised because, look, I thought Turner acclimated well. I thought that he was somebody that earned an opportunity to be at training camp. But yeah, like you said, there were things we didn't see, but we did get to see several practices where he looked good. I think he'll be picked up. I think he'll have an opportunity to compete for a job. And you look at Jake Bates, and clearly, he's got an intangible that gets you in the door. He's got a big leg. And the thing that is going to be interesting and intriguing is, can he be accurate enough in competition day in, day out? Because we will be there every single day of training camp. Can he compete? Because right now, to me, Badgley's the favorite. He's consistent, Mr. Reliable. And NFL coaches love people that they can trust and rely upon. And I believe Badgley's only missed a handful of kicks in the time he's been in Detroit. But I think that everybody's happy. You get to see the guy that kind of ignited some passion, and I think that it'll be a good opportunity for him to grow and learn. He's got an intangible, but I think he's got more to learn in terms of accuracy and kicking under pressure. I thought that his opening game-winning kick was great from distance. I think the one thing that bodes well for him is that the Lions play a lot of games this year indoors, so the elements are not going to be a factor in a lot of games. I think he has a great opportunity to make this team. But at this point, as we're talking, as I'm drinking, Badgley's the leader in the clubhouse, and Bates has to come in and take the job. But he has an opportunity to do it, and I hope he does. I hope it's intriguing. It's something always interesting to watch at camp in the kicking battles in the preseason. So let's have it. Let's have at it. Let's have a kicking competition, and it'll be interesting to see who wins it.
I love to hear that. I think it's going to be electric. I put a couple tweets out about that being like, this is going to be an electric battle at camp. And some people tweeted me and were like, you're talking about the kicking battle? Like, no, yeah, the kicking battle, bud. Like, this is going to be a good battle.
Bud.
Like, strap in. Here we go. I do want to ask this, Doc. Since we spoke last week, everything's over now. We're getting ready and gearing up for training camp in a couple weeks here now, or about a month. I don't know if you remember, and I'm sure you were actually probably in attendance, but when Dan Campbell mentioned how they were looking, and him and Brad were going to talk this week about adding depth and finding other pieces, what kind of position groups do you see over the next 4 weeks before training camp? Whether it's one or even if it's two or three, what position groups do you kind of see them adding to add some depth to take a look and say, hey, we can go out there and make some moves? Because I'm sure they're going to. It sounded like they're going to, and Brad's always moving and working. What are those position groups do you think that they're going to make some moves in?
Yeah, I think right now with the situation, I think there's one open roster spot. So you always look at it, and Dan Campbell said it would be a depth competition type thing, and maybe it would be a safety. Maybe you look at continued growth and depth along the offensive line because you have a young developing player in Manu, and you want to shore that up to make sure that, hey, an opportunity presents itself. But you look at the opportunities, you look at the Lions roster, and they've done a lot of great jobs in terms of upgrading so many different variety of the positions that you look at. They brought in a veteran linebacker that has familiarity with the coaching staff. So I look at it and I say, maybe at this point in time, in regards to the position, you want to just keep shoring up more and more, and that's on the defensive side. And I look at nice competition battles because of the fact that you don't know exactly if DJ Reader is going to be available at the start of training camp. Maybe he'll miss the first week, maybe not available until pads, as Dan Campbell said. Maybe you bring in a veteran defensive lineman or a defensive tackle. So I look at the Detroit Lions, and they have so many different opportunities to have great competition and depth that it's going to be really fun when camp rolls around. Especially, you really got to give credit to Brand Holmes for really putting a lot. When you look at the roster, it's a roster that has a lot of depth and has a lot of veterans combined with youth that, if they take off, can really be a special opportunity. I'm curious to see if they make an addition, in the meantime, or probably I would look closer towards training camp as they continue to debate and discuss and see who they feel learned the most from camp, and who's going to take advantage and have the opportunity to compete for, maybe if not the active roster, but the practice squad. The Lions are a team that really value the practice squad, and they don't, which is good for us, they don't rotate the practice squad all that much throughout the year, handful of moves, because they do invest in training those players that are out there on the practice squad. So those guys that come in, 89th, 90th, they have a legit chance to be part of the practice squad if they don't make the active roster.
Doc, thank you as always for joining the Podfather. But you brought up the safety depth, and something that Booner brought up I believe it was either earlier this week or late last week, when we were talking about players that could possibly take a step back. And when you look at Iffy Melifonwu and how good he was at that last stretch of the season, what do you think the Lions and also yourself expect from him? Because I don't think it's fair to hold him to the standard of those last 7 games. Because to Boone's point, if he plays like that for 17 games, he's the best defensive player in football. So what do you think we should expect from Iffy in 2024?
Yeah, it's a good question. And you realize a player that emerged and you saw his blitzing ability, his physicality, difficulty to assess throughout and project what he's about, because he got hurt quite a bit and just, took a time a little bit to develop. But when he was out there combined with Kirby, I thought they acclimated very well. And I thought that when you had, a secondary that struggled, I thought the safety stepped up last year. Kirby Joseph, 4 interceptions, and Ifeatu Melifonwu called upon to blitz. But now here's the problem, in that you may see him take, I don't think it's a demotion, but you may see him play a little bit less if Brian Branch adapts over to the safety spot. And you recognize, look, Ifeatu Melifonwu is a guy that's done everything the Lions have asked, changed positions, has acclimated to the safety spot. But I think he's a talented physical safety, and I think he's the prototype of what the Lions like. And I do think that a situation too, and you never know, the talk of Brian Branch playing safety, would they actually do that? Because of the fact that, I do believe they will, but how much? Maybe that kind of talk is used to kind of see, hey, let's just kind of float out there that if his job may be in jeopardy, let's see how he responds, kind of light a fire of competitiveness under a player. And I think that he's going to compete hard to earn more playing time. I think he's gained some confidence. I like him as a player. I think he's no nonsense and somebody that likes to deliver the big hit. And I think he's just there kind of ready to break out. And I think that if he can compete in training camp, maybe his job will be to make it difficult for the coaching staff to take him off the field. I think it just gives them options. You could have Branch and Ifeatu Melifonwu, Branch and Kirby Joseph, and I don't think you're going to have much of a drop-off. And then you could put Branch in the nickel spot, who's amongst already, I believe what Chris Spielman said, Brian Branch acclimated well to a position at nickel that's not easy in terms of what they ask a nickel slot cornerback to do. So I think the Lions at the safety spot, you just hope that Kirby Joseph recovers well from the hip surgery, and you got 3 talented safeties that I think can do a lot of difficult things in terms of clogging the middle and taking away some of the superstars from the opposing offenses.
Yeah, and Doc, we had this conversation too. And the Pride of Detroit put out an article about just what position group lacks the most depth, and we discussed it here on the show. And I want your opinion on that conversation, at least a position group that you're more concerned about depth. It brought up offensive line. I did. And I want your thoughts on really not saying you always have to plan for injury, hope and no one gets injured, obviously. But are you confident in someone like Colby Sorsdahl that he'll be ready to fill any void? Maybe he has to play tackle, guard, so on and so forth. How confident are you in the offensive line depth? And if you are, then what other position group are you worried about?
No, that's very fair. I mean, there's no perfect football team. You're going to have concerns. The starters clearly could be among the best in the National Football League across the board. I just hope they stay healthy. But if not, I do think that Colby Sorsdahl will be an individual that's going to take the opportunity seriously. Struggled a little bit last year. I like what Onwuzurike did as well. I think that those 2 guys will be the first 2 that they consider. Dan Skipper, I think that he's a guy that Yeah, big physical offensive lineman that can move around and do some things. And I look at it and I say, yeah, probably the depth along the offensive line, you could always upgrade. Again, it's always tough when you look at the linebacker spot. I think that you have some emerging players there as well. I just think that when you look at the roster as a whole, you have some question marks in terms of who's going to develop. But if they hit and you think that, okay, you're in development with Colby Sorsdahl, Broderick Martin on the other side, you think the defensive tackle spot maybe is something of a concern as well if something happens to DJ Reader, the veteran there as well. So I do think the offensive line probably is the group. And I think, too, maybe the one that everybody still looks at and is concerned about is the wide receiver spot, because they haven't, heard a lot about Antoine Green and DPJ, and Khalif Raymond is always kind of under the radar, even though he's talked about a lot more. I do think that, wide receiver is always a position that if you can upgrade and get somebody that can move the chains, that's always a position of need that you can always look to. But they have maybe in Caden Davis, I thought he acclimated well. And at the same token, too, the tight ends that have not been talked about have also done a good job as well. So the roster in and of itself, I think has been constructed very well when you look at it in terms of the mix between vets and young talent and some developing guys as well. That, yeah, I think that it's fair to say that the offensive line is one in which you could upgrade, and kind of make it so that you're a little bit more comfortable if something happens to the starters.
Doc, all right, we're kind of right now, we're in like the lull period here, obviously between minicamp and training camp. And I've been seeing, and a lot of people on the internet are trying to, find content, put things out. I've seen the last week people grading the Detroit Lions offseason compared to NFC North teams. I saw today an article saying that might not have had the best. They feel like the Detroit Lions didn't have the best offseason, and added to that, we haven't really asked you this yet throughout the whole offseason, which we probably should have and done this earlier. What is your offseason grade for Brad Holmes and the Detroit Lions? I haven't really heard that from you yet here on our show, and I would love to know kind of like just A, B, C, D, like kind of a grade like that. I would love to know what your grade is and kind of how you feel about what they've done compared to like the Packers and the Bears and the Vikings here in the NFC North.
Yeah, the offseason is always fun for us because, it's not a lot of content from the players, but it's a lot of evaluations. It's a lot of, okay, let's take a look at what happened last year. Let's take a look at the roster construction. Let's start to preview. 5 weeks will go by fast. So if you check out All Lions, we will have as much content as you would like. We even did a podcast today, really spending almost 30 minutes on the kicking situation, looking at Bates, Bagley, Turner. Also in the second half, if you're not all about the kicking, we talked about Amon-Ra St. Brown and the best way we think Jahmyr Gibbs should be used in this offense. So there's going to be content galore. And it's always funny, too, because, the other site you guys talked about, they love to, and everyone, too, break down what people said about the Lions rankings in the offseason. But at this point, I think we've written maybe 3 already in regards to kind of it's overkill regarding the offseason, because at this point, everyone kind of around the end of the draft kind of says, okay, and then free agency, you can kind of recap everything that's gone on. So it is kind of digging a little bit in terms of content. And this is kind of where the national media comes in and local sites kind of will address and respond to whether they agree or disagree with the national media. And so today somebody put out, they thought that the Lions offseason, based on their decision to extend Jared Goff and give him a massive contract, that made their offseason go down to a C. And so you look at it, everybody has an opinion. In my mind, I never want to hate on anybody outside of Detroit, but if you want the best coverage, stick locally. I mean, guys like me, Jeremy, Jeff, they're in tune in terms of every single day being aware of what's going on. And, the national media, kind of like you guys opened with Stephen A. Smith kind of saying about Monty Williams, they have opinions, but they're not going to be as colored or has enough depth in regards of knowledge. So now talking about the Lions offseason, only way you can really grade it is an A, because they identified their biggest weakness in the secondary. It was terrible. I mean, literally Cam Sutton, Jerry Jacobs, that should have given everybody pause last year. And it was a concern. It ended up coming to fruition. Jacobs didn't even finish the year in Detroit, finished on IR, and Cam Sutton, you know what happened to him. He was jettisoned out in 24 hours after his legal problems arose. So you look at it and you say, okay, you've upgraded that position drastically with Carlton Davis, who I think will step in nicely and do some things. You added Terrion Arnold, who was the first defensive back that Brad Holmes drafted here in Detroit. That's a drastic upgrade, along with Ennis Rakestraw, who can be a big physical cornerback as well, can adapt when he gets in there as well. I think that he's a big player with big personality, even though he's not as, in terms of his stature, as big as Terry and Arnold. I think that he plays big, and he's somebody that I think can really be underrated at this point because he was kind of held back a little bit. I think Ennis Rakestraw, when he gets it going and he's healthy, when he puts those pads on, I think people are going to recognize him pretty quickly. So you look at the offseason, and they addressed in free agency the needs along the defensive line. You pick up Davenport, you pick up DJ Reader, and then you go through and you add in the draft, I think, a lot of areas that you could say, okay, hey, this is plugged in a hole here or a developmental player there. And I think you have a couple sleepers as well. We didn't talk about on the offensive line. Christian Mahogany could kind of become a road grader in terms of a player, and Manu down the road. Wingo, I think, could be a contributor. So the draft, I think, is going to be viewed very favorably. So there's no way to view this offseason other than favorably if you look at it piece by piece in terms of where the allocation of funds was given. And then you took care of your guys, Sewell, St. Brown, and Goff. No questions asked. You paid them. So there's no way to look at it but a great offseason, graded as an A. I'll say, I can say it freely, ESPN had some hate. Sports Illustrated actually came out to practice. One of the national writers came out, and I saw him there. And he I don't know, they're doing the Sports Illustrated doing the 32 teams in 32 days. I think Detroit's is going to come out where he had some talk with Penei Sewell and others as well. Sports Illustrated, the writers that have been kind of peeking in as well, they love what's been going on with the Detroit Lions. Even though there's some, dissent here and there, Sports Illustrated loves the Detroit Lions, as well does All Lions with SI.com. So it's a good opportunity to stay local and hang with the people that are close to the Detroit Lions.
Something I've always wondered, Doc, kind of staying on the subject there. When you're down in Allen Park with this Lions roster, is there a player that's much more of a leader from inside that we don't really realize being on the outside, not being down there at training camp, at practices during the season? Is there a player that sticks out more than we should realize as far as being a leader with this team?
I think a growing leader is Derek Barnes. I think that he's a player that kind of rose through and kind of took his lumps early and has become a guy that's become a vocal leader on that defense. Jack Campbell, I think, is going to be somebody that eventually is going to, once he's more confident in everything that he believes in and has a little bit more experience, he's always a guy that's tough on himself. I think he'll emerge as well. But the vets, I think, a guy that's new, Carlton Davis, will be a leader. The guy clearly oozes confidence. He's already gathering the young defensive backs and teaching them the ropes a little bit. And then another guy, I think that just kind of his sense of kind of how he carries himself and his confidence, I think Amik Robertson coming in, I think his experience level will allow him to come in and handle business. Another leader as well on the offensive side, David Montgomery. I think when you see a guy that's been in the NFC North, understands kind of the leader of that running backs room, I think he's kind of one of those more quiet leaders, not the rah-rah guy, but I think in the locker room, people will respect him and look up to him because of what he's done. And guys, you can never discount Jared Goff. I think that when you see a guy that's steady, he's not going to get up in everybody's face and just light someone up. But when there's something that needs to be said and you need somebody to deliver a message based on their play, or you need somebody to keep a locker room tight, Jared Goff, I think, is a great leader for that offense. And you look at it, I think that Amon-Ra St. Brown and those wide receivers look to QB1 to stay steady when things get murky there in games, because it's tough. And when you have a steady Eddie kind of guy that's just even keeled through the good and the bad, that can really be a steadying force for a football team. So I really do like the makeup of the leadership in that locker room too.
Yeah, you saw Sam LaPorta. He attended Tight End University. I think he's already been there before, but he's working out this offseason. I'll ask you, what does a successful season for Sam LaPorta look like in your eyes? And is there anything that you've noticed or anything that stuck out from Sam LaPorta this offseason, at least at this point in time, than last offseason as a rookie?
I expect Sam LaPorta to dominate. I mean, there's nothing that should indicate to me that he should not be one of the top 3 tight ends in all of football. Size, speed, great hands, understands the offense, a lot more comfortable, and he's kind of been molded now to focus on the next play, and he kind of has that stern, professional Patriots way type attitude now after being talked to about. Just go look at some of his early stuff. He was giggling, having a good time, and now he's just strictly business. I think he wants to dominate. I think that this is a player that when you look at it, when you have that record-breaking kind of success early on, now people know about you. And I love the fact that these tight ends all get together to try and improve the whole unit as a whole. And you look at it, 3 Detroit Lions, Brock Wright, Shane Zylstra, and Sam LaPorta. Quite frankly, I think those are the 3 tight ends that the Lions are going to feature this year. Everyone else is kind of trailing from behind. They're at tight end U, and they're handling business. They're picking the brains of George Kittle, Travis Kelce, and they're having a good time. And I do think that Sam LaPorta, man, when you look at it, different than TJ Hockenson and an upgrade. People were a little bit concerned about making that trade in the middle of the season, but you recognize, let Brad Holmes handle business. He knew that an opportunity that you weren't going to probably want to pay TJ Hockenson that kind of money. But I think that when you see the total package that Sam LaPorta is, there should be no reason, barring any injury, that guy can't be one of the top 3, if not the best tight end in football this year.
I love that. Doc. Let's go.
Why not?
I think you're spot on. I think he could end up being the best this year. Doc, I want to. We've talked about the defense, the last few weeks as well, with minicamp over now, and you got to see guys like Terrion and Amik, and you got to see Carlton Davis up close, and Jack Campbell, kind of what he's become. Obviously, DJ Reader. Where do you kind of see this defense being this year, kind of in the NFL? Because I know about a month ago, maybe a little longer than that, we spoke with you about how it would, can they take that jump from 25th into the top 15? Now that we were actually able to, you were able to go into Allen Park and see some of these new pieces, do you think that's even more, now that you see it, is that more realistic for that jump to happen now with Carlton and Terrion and Jack taking a jump and, the defensive line additions?
Yeah, I really do believe. Real fast, I want to address Ben Diesel, the all caps commenter over there. I see your comments. Listen, man, I know more about sports. I've probably forgotten more about sports than you do. So I'll look at it like this. I started a successful podcast, not just talking about the Lions. SI didn't sign me. And look, I don't want to spend time talking about myself, but there's 2 minutes here to say that they didn't sign me because I just knew the NFL. I understand Detroit sports top to bottom. That's my passion. Outside of that, that is something that, others can handle, like the Stephen A. Smiths, the national opinions. I love Detroit sports top to bottom. And in regards to, the Pistons and their young talent, yeah, they're young, but I could also find young talent too that's a little bit better that they should have on this roster that they passed on. So hopefully that they can upgrade, because if you have a young dimensional, one-dimensional Asar Thompson, come on, guys, they need shooters. Shooters make the game in a way that help you do a lot of things, especially in this NBA where the three-point shot is so key and you don't have a lot of them. So you can have as young a roster as possible. If they can't shoot, they can't handle business. And same now, if you look at the Lions defense, if they can't tackle and get those turnovers, there's going to be a problem. I expect more sacks this year. I expect more pressure. I expect Aaron Glenn to be the happiest man in the entire NFL because he's got some weapons to kind of execute what he wants. It's going to be a violent, aggressive defense that's going to get to the quarterback. They're going to pressure the quarterback, and they're going to be able to handle things. I think, it's always tough in today's NFL. Me, growing up in the past, just seeing the Ravens and that influence of Ray Lewis, I wanted that defense that's just going to lock it down. It's tough in this NFL where it's just all tailor-made for the offense to do a lot of things. So I think that you saw even last year a bend don't break defense that really started to gain traction and kept opponents out of the end zone. That's how they won a lot of those games. I see that with a lot more turnovers. I expect the Detroit Lions to have a top 15 defense. I expect, and guys, let me give you a hint. When I do a fact or fiction and I put a question mark, it's having a debate. So it doesn't mean, hey, that the headline says, is Aaron Glenn on the hot seat? That's my opinion. Now, if you read that well-crafted, edited article with a great video featuring me in it, I said that, yes, Aaron Glenn's on the hot seat. He is expected to perform, as is every single coach. The defensive back struggled last year, and boom, they moved on from Dre Bly. When Aubrey Pleasant struggled, they moved on. And if the defense is not executing, then yes, Aaron Glenn, this is his year to prove it because he's been given enough to handle business. And if the defense is not good enough, then you're going to potentially see a new defensive coordinator. Now, do I expect my close, to give you guys a tease to an article? The article said at the bottom, if you didn't get down to it, I said, yes, it's a fact. Aaron Glenn's on the hot seat, but with the new tools he's got, I expect him to jump off of that hot seat very quickly to showcase what he's about. I think he can be one of those great defensive minds and execute with the talent that he's got. You got Terrell Williams and Deshae Townsend taking over with a little bit more experience. If you get that defensive line to pressure the quarterback and Aiden takes a step and becomes the defensive player of the year, as some would like to believe, then
yes, sir,
it will be a defense that shines, and that would make me happy. That's my favorite side of the ball. And guys,
real quick, Klotz, real quick before
we haven't even talked about Jack Campbell, who I think could dominate this year as well.
Just quick follow up with the defense there on that question. Just taking a step forward, because I do agree with you. I think it's a make or break year for AG. Like, it is a big year for him. You can't just consistently have a top 25 defense and still be a DC. But just the Terrell Williams thing, is that how big of a impact is that kind of at practice and stuff? Is Terrell like pretty active in there helping AG and kind of getting involved with things there? Like, what have you seen with that?
Yeah, I love it. When he said, could you imagine? It's funny, narratives that kind of come out. People started to kind of insinuate that Terrell Williams was a teddy bear. And so that kind of got back to him in one of the sessions. And he's like, wait till the pads come on and you think I'm a teddy bear? He'll be MFing those guys all up and down the defensive line. Look, listen, guys, and you got to understand the dynamic, and I can give it to you real simple here in regards to the dynamic. Dan Campbell is a hard-nosed Bill Parcells coach who in front of the media is very jovial, very nice. But if there's something he doesn't like, you better be certain it will be addressed and addressed quickly. He's a football coach, and the people that are there are football coaches, and they're tough on their players, but they pick players that understand that they want to be coached hard. They don't want to be told and coddled all the time. They need, obviously, confidence. But at the same token, what's different than the Matt Patricia era is there is compliments. There are a lot more of a jovial nature in terms of having some fun, letting the guys relax and play ping pong. But Terrell Williams is experienced, and he's going to get the best out of the defensive line. I expect DJ Reader, I expect Broderick Martin to play well. I expect Lee McNeil to have a career year, and look for Wingo to, when he has his opportunity, make some plays. I do think the coaching staff at this point is the best in terms of the assistants that they've had. And a sneaky fit there that I liked. I like Coach O'Neill. Vast experience all over the league, working with the safeties. And he took time last year to come to Detroit when he was out of a job, just to kind of connect with people to get his foot back in the door. And if you go back and listen to his pressers, I thought he demonstrated a lot of great defensive knowledge. And I think he's going to be an underrated addition to this coaching staff. I like Coach O'Neill in the talk we had with him.
Doc, a name you didn't mention when talking about that defensive line is Levi O, and I know that you were hyping him up. You were hyping him up, saying he was barreling through, could have sacked Hendon Hooker twice. Do you think Levi Onwuzurike, who I've been a player that I've been very critical of, I don't think he has the brightest future with this team long term, do you think he carries this momentum into training camp, or do you think it kind of stalls out in OTAs?
Yeah, no doubt. I think Ben will like this one. You're talking about Levi K. Cunningham, Onwuzurike, always hurt. Look, this is a guy that was battling a back situation. He came in hot. He came in, was talking like, I'm going to wreck the league. And then, unfortunately, his injuries caught up with him a little bit. But now he's able to sustain the weight that he's put on. He's more muscular at 300 pounds. I think he's going to compete and fight for his job. He has to. So I look at it and I say that, it's always tough when injuries derail your career because he's got talent and he was in the backfield. I know he didn't have pads on, but he made a case like, hey, in the spring, I needed to do what I needed to do. And I think that for an individual, if he can stay healthy, I love the opportunity that he's going to have. If he can stay healthy, I think he'll make it difficult in regards to moving on. But I think right now he's a little bit behind in the depth chart. A player I want to see stay healthy too, in the Cade Cunningham realm, in the department of, hey, needs to stay healthy but has talent, is Josh Pascal. I think that guy can do some things and pressure the quarterback, and he can develop this year with the new tutelage, Terrell Williams. I think he can emerge and be somebody you can trust when he's been healthy, he's been somebody that's been able to get to the quarterback and make plays. I'm looking forward to, he's one of those guys that's a young guy that can do some things. And then just real fast, guys, remember, when you give an opinion, it doesn't have to be like, oh my gosh, if Cade Cunningham's on the team, I'm going to be disappointed. I'll enjoy his 30 points and I'll enjoy watching him and I'll be a full supporter. But I think that when you look at it, it's a Cade Cunningham, Tariq Skubal, Flaherty, they're all victim of circumstances in regards to Cade departing would not be solely due to his talent. It would be also a part of you don't have enough of it. And if you can get more of it with one first or second or more and a player, then you have to take advantage of it. So that's how you look at it. I didn't say Cade Cunningham is a bum. I said that I think that the roster is depleted, not good enough. And if you get a first round offer and a player and a vet and somebody or a first and a second, then you take that opportunity. Similarly with good players, I'll say this when you guys talk about opinions and, oh my God, push back on the doc. Go ahead. I love it. It's guys, I'm not God. I just state my mind, my opinion, and I say it freely and I don't back down. And that's why I work with a national company. The biggest pushback I got in sports was not the Stafford opinion when I was like, oh, Stafford sucks. And I think that he's going to be somebody that's never going to win here in Detroit. I said that from year 5 and took the heat there. The biggest pushback I got, and I was surprised. I had, over my time, I have friends that work in baseball that are scouts, professional scouts. And they told me, John, Michael Fulmer is going to blow out his arm. There is no way with the delivery that we see that guy is going to last. Guarantee you, John Maakaron, stamp it. I'll even let you say my name on your podcast. I said Michael Fulmer will have arm problems. So I went out and said, and I started tweeting, I said, trade Michael Fulmer ASAP. Oh my God, that's the worst thing I've ever seen. You don't know baseball. Stick to football. Stick to the internet. I said, okay, no problem. And then when he blew out his arm, that's what happened. And you got nothing for him. You had Michael Fulmer at the peak when he was rising up. And I said, hey, it wasn't just an uninformed opinion. So you guys can push back on any opinion that I say on this. I read the comments that you guys say. I love it. I love the debate. And that's why I love the opportunity for those that say, hey, when Jeff, looks flabbergasted, I can understand. He's attached to, I think the easiest way to put it is I look at sports and players from a GM perspective. If I smell anyone better, I'm out. I'm not loyal to the players. I'm a GM. I'm more of the, hey, if there's anybody I think is better, I cut and move on quickly. I don't look at it like, oh my God, Cade Cunningham. I don't have his jersey. I don't need him to like me. I look at it like if there's something better, I go for it. That's how you win. And I do the same thing with my staff. I tell my guys, if I could just find 2 individuals better than you, Vito and Christian, I'd move on from you fast. You guys are crazy. What the hell am I working with? They're lucky I haven't put out the pursuit of anyone better. I love those guys. But I tell them too, I'm not loyal to you. If I find someone better, I'm moving on. I'm all about winning, baby.
It's a cutthroat business, Doc.
Hey, Doc.
Cutthroat business, baby. And
man.
Oh God, what happens if I'm wrong about Cade Cunningham and he's a superstar? I get to cheer for him. Big whoop, guys. It's a basketball opinion. It ranks low on the opinion scale, guys. Basketball, guys, I'll be honest with you. Basketball ratings don't move the needle. I could probably have 50 bad basketball takes. It doesn't matter. I have 5 great NFL takes, and it pays the bills.
Wow.
I'll say this. Man. Don't do a basketball podcast. Talk about it with your friends. Talk about it with this. Basketball will get your lights shut off. It won't pay the bills.
You know what, Doc? I will say this. We do appreciate
It's not that popular.
I want to make this very clear, Doc. I want to make this very clear. I let you finish there. My opinion is my opinion. There is part of it, that, again, I do love Cade.
Yeah.
But I don't really care about anything about the Pistons. I mean, I don't really give a shit. I mean, we've said some pretty crazy stuff on this show. I don't do things. There are certain individuals which I do respect their work, and this isn't just Pistons, but in general, where they have to kind of adhere to that set organizations. Yeah. You don't want to speak to off base because then they'll just pull your credentials. I don't got no credentials. I don't give
that's
a
great.
fuck about
That's
any of
good.
that. And we have our own podcast. But I will say, don't group that K take into that. I do believe that. I do like K. Now, I'm not going to defend Isaiah Stewart here. I mean, let's be real, Doc. I'm not going to dig that hole. But Cade Cunningham, we do disagree.
Yeah, it's
Doc,
guys, Cade can drop 30 on any given night. That's great. I think you guys should cheer for him. And there's probably a big chance he stays on this roster because of, the opportunity that he could do and what he sees. I just look at it from a GM side. If an offer is made that blows my mind, I make the deal right away. And I look at it and I hope Cade has the opportunity. I hope he doesn't get frustrated with what's going on. I hope he stays in Detroit and has a great career. And guys, too, I think that's overblown. I don't think that sports teams in town threaten to pull credentials for opinions. What they want is fairness. They don't just want somebody just being negative, one-sided. They want, hey, okay, highlight this and highlight that. But I haven't heard of in a situation in which a media member's credentials were pulled. And you just got to look at it. There's one columnist that has written some wild stuff about the Detroit Lions, and he's there every single day as well and doing the things he needs to do. You just got to be fair and balanced, and that's all they respect. That's all they want. You look at it, but it is easier in the media if you're a lot more team friendly in regards to like, okay, out of 10 articles, if you write 8 good ones and view it that way, it's a lot easier. I don't have to worry about that. I'm right down the middle. I would say I'm 5-5.
I will say, Doc, I was on the, and maybe this isn't in fairness, I was on the, hey, Tom Gores, you probably should look at selling the team about 9 months ago, and I was in behind the scenes action, hey, you probably shouldn't be saying that and doing that, what you're doing, and making the owner mad potentially. So there is that side of things, but now, hey, I've got no one sitting here. We own Crunch Time fully. I could say, hey, sell the team. If you can't figure out a head coach and a GM this time around for the 7th time in 13 years, hey, you probably should throw the team on the market. Just like, if I owned a car business for 13 years and I sold 0 cars for 13 years, I probably should just say, hey, I'm probably not good at this thing. So,
and see, look, we've talked about Cade and for 30 minutes, and I didn't even once bring up the fact that the guy doesn't eat meat. And hey, that's a situation in which if you're going to bang bodies and you're going to be a vegan, this is Detroit, baby. We got barbecue restaurants every corner. So listen, man, you got to mix in a little steak. And guess who said they mixed in a little steak after going vegan? Ali McNeil found the truth again. And he figured out, if you're a pro athlete and you're trying to be vegan in that plant-based stuff, good luck to you. I think I think they've been sold a bill of goods in regards to keeping that inflammation down on your joints. You can mix in a T-bone every once in a while, not every day, but guy doesn't eat meat. Ship him out of town.
You have.
I'm teasing. I'm kidding.
No, and that's why I love you, Doc. You're opinionated, and although we disagree on some things, you are great at what you do, and we appreciate.
I love talking it.
Yeah.
Yes.
If we're getting fired up, Doc, June 19th, what's Doc look like?
Love it.
September?